motherfucker. The king is back.
Back in the lab, back in action. Got a new little lab that we're working from, if you can't tell. Outside the Octagon is back for another in-person episode. Jude and I are finally able to be in the same room, like we said, after a few weeks over the course of Zoom. Glad to be back. I'm your host, Charleston Payne. Joining me to my left, the wonderful co-host of this podcast we got going here, Jude Starnes. Jude, glad to have you back, bud.
Yeah, man, always good to be on the podcast.
Yeah, today we got, quite frankly, what I would consider a dreaded episode. Our comment sections are eating us up right now. We've been getting eaten alive on YouTube, Instagram, kind of everywhere you can imagine. People have been going off on us simply because we didn't really make the right predictions for this card. And I'm going to lead off by saying that we are only human. Not everything's going to go right. And another thing I want to say is make sure you follow us on Instagram. Now that we're back in the same room, it's going to pop up about right there at outside the Octagon pod _. Make sure you go give us a follow. I'll probably try to tag it in like an episode card in the top left or something. Just make sure you give us a little follow on Instagram so that way you can stay updated with the episodes. Jude?
Yeah, still the best picks in the game. I don't care what you say. But go check out Prowler Pickles for any pickles or honey using code OTO10. Help us make a little commission so we can get back to you guys.
Absolutely. ProwlerPickles.com. Go check it out over there. Incredible pickles, incredible honey. I can't wait to be able to get some more in. That's all I got to say about it. We still need to get that video out of us sampling all the different flavors. Got a lot to do with that. So just make sure you go to ProwlerPickles.com. Check that out. Anyways, let's go ahead and get into it. UFC 305, our predictions. It just wasn't our night. We'll start with one thing I want to talk about, like in the prelims, was Junior Tafa with the stoppage. Some people argue early stoppage. I kind of am on the fence about it. I mean, I showed Jude the video because I know you weren't able to watch the prelims that much yesterday, but I showed Jude the video. Very weird stoppage for the simple reason he was in the heel hook by Valter Walker. Valter Walker rolls him over, which typically when you get the heel hook and you get rolled over, it's probably going to be over anyway. But Junior Tafa, instead of tapping or anything, just screams like, ah, and fight's over. Referee called it to a verbal tap, which kind of a toss up. I mean, if you put yourself in the referee's shoes, what would you do there? Just a big question mark.
And in my opinion, it's always better early than late, at least. I mean, yeah, it's going to look bad on a guy's record if you stop it early, but it's better that than to hurt them long-term in their career and everyday life. So I was okay with the stoppage, and I'm not saying it was the greatest ever, but it's always better early than late. I don't think it was anything too blatant or anything, so I don't disagree with the stoppage necessarily.
Absolutely. And moving into the main card a little bit, I had Carlos Prates versus Li Jingliang. Jude had Li Jingliang in that one, the leech, Carlos Prates, I think that you give him a couple more years. I think he might be the number one contender or possibly the champion of the lightweight division. He proved a lot in that fight. He kept knocking Li Jingliang down, and Li Jingliang somehow kept getting back up until he hit him with that right hook and then followed it up directly after with the left hook just a few milliseconds later and put the guy down, man. I mean, that was a pretty insane fight. Carlos Prates won through and through. I mean, he was 5 or 6 knockdowns throughout the fight and then finished him with the knockout walk-off KO. Put the guy to sleep, man, for real. Like, it was a crazy matchup.
Yeah, and Lee is probably on his way out the door with that loss. He really proved me wrong. Starting to get up there in age. Probably won't be getting a title shot. Maybe he will. Who knows? But I think that proved a lot more for Carlos Prates. But it was a risky fight for Lee to take, and I believe he knew that. And the UFC's been doing a good job of rewarding those guys to take those fights. But it is what it is, man. Took a loss. I didn't really see it coming. I thought Carlos Prates still had some more things to prove, and he proved them all to me that night, and I think he's going to be good in the future.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that he's definitely a force to be reckoned with at lightweight. Got an insane freaking amount of power behind his punches. I mean, the left hand's got power. The right hand's got power. The kicks are there. I mean, he's a nice fighter, bro. He's fun to watch. He's going to be electric in lightweight.
For sure.
Next up, the next one I want to talk about, Tai Tuivasa, obviously, versus Jairzinho Rozenstruik. First of all, Rozenstruik absolutely controlled the entire fight. Previous to that, his first 8 fights that he won in the UFC were by knockout. He proved that he can go the full 15 minutes in a 3-round fight and get the decision win. That's his first one of those. So pretty nice to see from Jairzinho Rozenstruik. Outstruck Tai Tuivasa by like 60-plus punches. It was totally one-sided, and still somehow one of the judges came out and said 30-27 Tuivasa. Obviously, if you didn't hear the news, he was relieved of his duties for the rest of the night, and they had another person come in and finish judging for the rest of the night after that, which is something you don't see during a main card of a typical UFC event. And you definitely don't see a judge like, sure, we could argue Strickland got robbed. Strickland got robbed against Du Plessis. You got Macy Barber versus Miranda Maverick, a guest that we had on the podcast, obviously, that runs Prowler Pickles. You could say Miranda Maverick got robbed. There's a lot of fights where it's like, yeah, they might have got robbed, but you never see anybody get outstruck by 60-plus punches and come out 30-27, ever.
I mean, yeah, that's absolutely insane. And to be honest, I'm not a big Rozenstruik fan, and I want Tai to win. It's not looking good for him. That judge had to go for sure. And I don't even understand some of these judges. That's just blatant obvious. Like I said, Tai fan over Rozenstruik at least. And it was just like, I'm looking at the numbers right here, and he's tripled in pretty much every category or more. So there's no way that, like, even if one of the rounds was close, none of them should have been close. But, like, even if one of the rounds was close, I don't understand how you give Tai anything, honestly, in that fight. And
yeah,
I'm kind of worried about him for the future, because I really like him, and he's on that 5-fight losing streak, and pretty soon he's going to be headed down the path of Tony Ferguson.
Yeah, I mean, it's looking rough for Tai Tuivasa. Obviously, in his backyard in Western Australia, I wanted to see him go out there and be able to get the finish, or at least just get the win. I mean, it's tough to watch a guy go on a downfall like this, because Tai is arguably one of my favorite heavyweights based off of personality. I have nothing against Jairzinho Rozenstruik. I really like his fighting style. I think it's incredible that a guy that's as big as Jairzinho Rozenstruik was a professional soccer player before an MMA fighter. Like, it's insane. That kind of proves that the guy does have that cardio to be able to go 3 rounds. It's just with the power that he has attached to the cardio, you very rarely get to see a 3-round fight out of him. So, I mean, I think he's an incredible fighter. I think he's a force to be reckoned with. Obviously, he's up there in age, and the heavyweight division is being held up. But, I mean, obviously, I don't think that we're going to get a Jairzinho Rozenstruik title run anytime soon. Incredible performance by Jairzinho, though. Should have been 30-27 across the board for him. I've never seen a more rigged, biased card by a judge in my life. That was a rough performance by that judge, and I'm very glad that the UFC did the right thing, relieved him of his duties for the remainder of the night.
For sure. I mean, but one thing I also want to say about that fight is, like, who would have ever thought the over on rounds would hit? Like, who would have thought that would have went to decision? Because with 2 of the bigger heavyweights, that almost, even if it ends by submission, it almost never goes to decision. So it's honestly pretty crazy. I'm sure there's a few people out there. Obviously, I didn't think that, and I didn't do too great on my picks. We're going to bounce back, so don't even worry about that. And if you got a problem with my picks, hey, come get at me. I'm ready anywhere, anytime.
Absolutely. I agree with that, man. I mean, people have been flaming us hard. I mean, if it was easy, like I said to one guy in the comment section, if it was easy, everybody would do it. Hopefully you're returning for this episode and listening, so that way that you understand that we are not perfect people, and if we were, we'd probably have 10 million subscribers right now, which we'll get that next week. But
and I'm not mad at them, and I'm thankful for their view still. Hopefully they left a thumbs up, but, I'm just saying we can fight about it or whatever, and we can be friends right after. I'm cool with that. That's what's so great about fighting, I guess.
Absolutely. I mean, you could show the sportsmanship after if you want, What's the next fight on your list, though, to talk about?
Man, I would probably say Gamrot and Dan Hooker, Both picked wrong on that, and I do regret not picking Dan Hooker, but you just never know what you're going to... Like, it's almost impossible to predict a Dan Hooker fight, because it's like he gives a beating, but he takes a beating, and like a lot of his fights, I feel like, especially the bigger ones, go to decision. But he takes so much damage, but he also gives it back. It's almost like Nate Diaz style fighting, but I would hope to see him get a BMF title shot at some point. I mean, I think that there's a lot of matchups that could be great, but he's just not a consistent winner, I don't believe, and I don't know that he ever will be. But I have a lot of love for Dan Hooker, that's for sure.
Yeah, the Hangman is incredible, man. I mean, he literally gets cut up in the first round, goes back to his corner, and he's telling his coaches, exact words, boys, I love this shit. And there's literally a Q-tip going into the upper right eyebrow or left eyebrow of Dan Hooker, and quite bloody, I must say. But, I mean, like Jude said, you don't know what you're going to get out of a Dan Hooker fight. You're fighting against a very strong wrestler, not necessarily a finisher in Matthäus Gamrot, but you're fighting against Matthäus Gamrot. You don't expect him to get the submission or anything, but you know he's going to come for takedowns. And I was very proud of the way that Dan Hooker defended the takedowns. He used his own submission attempts to stay away from the takedowns of Matthäus Gamrot, because Matthäus Gamrot was coming in straight at the right hip or straight at the left hip each time. And for the majority of those takedown attempts, Dan Hooker would counter that with a guillotine choke just to be able to sprawl and escape right after, which is a very, like, some fighters don't even realize that they can do that. You know, some fighters don't even realize that you could escape a takedown, especially if they're coming straight at the hip, by just going for the ghillie. And it very clearly paid off for Dan Hooker as he got the win by decision.
Well, Dan Hooker's takedown defense is very underrated with a lot of other guys like Sean Strickland. I'm sure we'll talk about that later on in the podcast, maybe. If not in future podcasts, we definitely will. But he has very underrated takedown defense. And, yeah, using those submissions, sometimes they can help. It can be kind of risky, though, because you can find yourself in a bad position quick. But Dan Hooker, he just finds ways to stop the takedowns and keep it a stand and bang match. And it's hard to stand and bang with Dan Hooker, dude, because he just doesn't care. Like, he has no cares.
No, I mean, he does not mind getting hit, and he loves to hit just as much as he loves getting hit in the face.
For sure.
And that's what, I mean, if you ask me, that's kind of the definition of BMF. Mm-hmm. That's what we got in Max Holloway. That's what we had in Justin Gaethje. Even George Masvidal is the same way. You know, sure. I mean, Masvidal was never, I mean, he loved hitting people, and he was never scared to get hit. I mean, you see what he did against Ben Askren, dude. Friggin', what was it? I mean, right when the fight started, the flying knee.
7 seconds.
7 seconds, yeah. I mean, absolutely nuts. But, I mean, every BMF that you've had all has the same fighting style.
Mentality,
and the same mentality as well. That's kind of the word I was looking for there. The same mentality to go out there, get hit in the mouth, but dish it out, and love both of those things.
Yeah, I definitely agree.
Absolutely. Next fight that I want to talk about, Steve Erceg versus Kai Kara France. That was, I mean, I called it, though. You can't say I didn't say that was going to be a fireworks show. During the predictions, I said it could possibly go either way. Going to be a fireworks show. Didn't necessarily say that I said it was going to go by knockout in the first round, nor did I say it was going to be Kai Kara France doing it. But what a performance, man. I mean, that just shows that Steve Erceg's experience level is not quite there. I do expect Erceg to be able to bounce back from this loss and learn a lot of things from it by fighting two of the highest level flyweights back to back, you know, with Pantoja and Kai Kara France. So, I mean, it's going to be a great time to watch Steve Erceg in the future. The only thing I'm worried about is this is quite frankly very similar to Dominic Reyes. Dominic Reyes nearly beats the champion, then fights one of the top contenders, loses those two, and then loses to some rando.
I definitely can see that.
Obviously, next fight for Erceg is probably going to be some rando.
Yeah. Well, I think that the Erceg title run starts now. I think that he's going to improve from that. I think he may be stronger mentally than, and that's what's really important that a lot of people don't talk about in the MMA game about the losses. It's not that people's figuring them out necessarily. Sometimes that is the truth. But, you know, it's really what do you have in your head? Like, you're battling yourself at that point. You start to question, do I still have the ability that I did have? And I think Erceg's really going to take this as an opportunity to learn. I think he's a guy that definitely probably watches tape and studies a lot. He seems like a smart dude. But KKF, I mean, I believe that he would win. I believe that the experience would show, and I think that it did show. He just had the timing, and Erceg wasn't quite ready for a guy of his caliber. I think that he's on the brink of it, and he's not far from a title shot. And I think if they fight 10 times, he's probably going to win 4 and KKF's going to win 6. So I think that could be a really interesting rematch for the future to really show us if Steve Erceg is ready for the title shot. But I think they'll be back. I think his title run starts now. I think give him about a year and a half, give him about 3-4 fights if he stays active, and he'll be just fine.
Yeah, I don't think that Steve Erceg is a guy to worry about after taking 2 losses. I mean, you got to remember the guy previous to fighting Pantoja had only 3 or 4 UFC bouts underneath him before he fought for a title. So not many people even expected him to win. I predicted him to win personally, but I mean, that's another thing that whenever we talk about this championship fight, that's one thing that we learned then, that some of these guys need to be taken serious.
And one thing I'll say also is Erceg, one thing that I think he could improve mostly about his game, the most in his game. So I've noticed that he's kind of a slow starter. He kind of feels it out a lot, just like, what's his name? Corey Sandhagen. I couldn't think of it. Kind of just starts a little too slow at points, which Corey Sandhagen improved that in his career, and that's how he has gotten title shots and all that and became a much better fighter. And I think he'll be back as well in a title shot very soon. Of course, he's got to get some wins after a loss to Umar. I mean, but Erceg's just a slow starter, and I think he's got to improve that for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and one thing that, Erceg would probably be the champion right now had he just not shot for a takedown late.
Yeah,
he's in the 5th round, had he not shot for a takedown. I think going into the 5th round, the fight was 2-2.
Yeah, I think he's just got
Pantoja. I think it was 2-2 going into the 5th, and Erceg kind of screwed the pooch, some would say, by shooting a 5th round takedown, and obviously Pantoja just has that edge in the ground game, strictly due to how much experience that he has.
Yeah, and you got to look at risk management and all that. So, and maybe it's a corner problem, but I think Erceg will get it figured out, and I think they'll be just fine.
Absolutely. And this is the fight that you guys really wanted to hear from us about. Oh, man, oh, man, oh, man. And still, Dricus Du Plessis submitted, of all things, and I must say that I only know one person, and I'll even shout him out for it because it's absolutely nuts to me that this happened. I only know one person that predicted Dricus by submission, and it's the Barnhill Brothers podcast. Go check them out because they had that. I really don't think that they were serious and meaningful with it, to be honest with you.
I think that was fixed. Barnhill Brothers called that in.
Yeah, facts.
I'm playing. Great podcast, so definitely go check them out. They have clips, Instagram, all that. You can go find them for sure.
Absolutely. But, I think that is the only person that I saw that had Dricus by submission. Given people were predicting Dricus to win because, why not? You got to kind of throw it up in the air a little bit. And it was a pick'em fight on odds. So, obviously, it could have went either way. Wasn't necessarily by any stretch an off night for Izzy, I don't think, though. I think Izzy fought relatively well throughout the night. I think that there are some things that we learned about Dricus, though. And I think that there's very many different ways that Dricus can be knocked out, in my opinion. Because every time, like, he can go in there and just hit you with a jab, everything's fine. But as soon as he goes to throw more than one punch in a combination, he comes in with his head straight down looking at the floor. And all you have to do for that is uppercut or just catch him on a counter. Like, just slip one of those punches while he's not even looking at you, throwing freaking haymakers. Slip one of those punches and just come over the top one time. There are ways to beat Dricus Du Plessis unless he fixes that part in his game. I noticed that as a weakness very quickly in this fight. And he did it against Strickland. He's done it against Whitaker. Given it's a hard thing to exploit because when he's throwing those punches, it's absolute haymakers. He's putting his entire body into them. His feet are like lifting off the floor when he throws those punches. He's bull rushing at you, head down. I think that just leaves too many openings, and I just don't think that Izzy was able to read that.
Well, the only thing is when you do kind of tuck your head like that, yeah, you can land some stuff. But when you tuck your head, it does kind of make it harder to really chin somebody and land a clean shot to the chin. But, there's still other things you can do for that for sure to beat him. And I definitely agree that could be a hole in his game. He seems to come in very off balanced as well.
Absolutely.
So I think that there's plenty of ways to beat him. But with that being said, also, I didn't see this as a win by submission for either guy. couldn't have really saw that. I could see DDP winning, and you guys, if you listened to the last podcast, you heard me. I literally picked on the podcast just reading off it resume, even though I watched both of them fight Sean Strickland and everything. It was a tough fight for me to pick. Obviously, it was going to be because the lines are going to be set pretty close to how tough the fight was going to be. And I think that was a really great fight altogether. And Izzy was, in my opinion, was winning the fight up to that point. He was winning the fight, and he got caught. He got caught sleeping, and it was very Brendan Allen-esque rear naked choke that he got in. And, I'll just give it to DDP. But his resume may be the best resume in middleweight, and he could actually have a shot at maintaining his title for sure. I mean, I'm not taking anything away from Izzy. I'm not taking anything away from DDP, but I think it's getting darker for Izzy. DDP's on the rise. I think it's his time.
One thing that has to be said, though, and we talked about this on the phone earlier, and I did not want to lose this thought, and it just came back to me. I have to say it. Previous to this fight, although he lost to Strickland before DDP, if you didn't have Izzy as your middleweight GOAT, you quite frankly were ignorant, in my opinion. I think Izzy is the greatest middleweight of all time previous to Dricus beating him. Right now, you better keep your eyes on Dricus, dude.
Yeah,
I am not a Du Plessis fan by any stretch of imagination, but I very well could see that guy running the division for a very long time after what he did to Izzy, because no matter who you are, your resume is automatically just skyrocketed if you beat Izzy, because there's only 3 middleweights that have ever done it. It's Dricus, obviously not a middleweight anymore, Pereira, and Sean Strickland. And if you look at Strickland was what, the 7th or 8th ranked whenever he fought Izzy, or was he 10th? I know he was pretty far down the line.
I almost want to say 10th, but it might have been 8th. Yeah. I don't think it was 7th. I don't think it was any higher than 7th.
Yeah, but he was ranked low, and then he beats Izzy, and then loses to Dricus, and now he just, no matter what you do, I mean, he probably could have lost to Costa, and he probably still would have been top 4.
No, I think
because having a win over Izzy just puts you on such a high pedestal of middleweight. And now that Dricus has that with only 2 losses, 0 losses in the Octagon, in the UFC Octagon, I mean, there's no denying him. You guys better watch out. That guy's going to be a force to be reckoned with. Unfortunately, if he fights Strickland again, I am going to pick Strickland, but I think we all have an idea how that fight's going to go. I think it wasn't very decisive. I think that Strickland won the first fight. I think that might have been a robbery, personally. Mm-hmm. But I want to say Strickland wins this time, but I think we know that it's only going to go worse with Strickland when they fight again.
And that's what I was going to say. I definitely disagree with that statement, and I will be picking DDP. As much as I love Sean Strickland, he's DDP, and we talked about mentality earlier. Getting that championship belt, it boosts your morale. It boosts your mindset. It just makes you feel like you can beat anybody in the world. So once you get a belt, that's why you can retain it, because you just feel like the best. It gives you a slight advantage in the mental area. And I think that he's improved from his last fight, and it was obvious. Now, I do think Izzy's on the downhill now, and I don't know that he's ever going to obtain the middleweight belt again. I think he's still going to be a great fighter, and he could be for a very long time, but it could go downhill quick, because I don't think Izzy retires on a win, and I don't know that he's going to win enough in a row to ever get a title shot again, but we'll see, and maybe I'm wrong on that. But I think if DDP and Sean Strickland fights again, I think DDP has improved so much. I just don't know that Sean Strickland's going to be able to get the win. Plus, they're both great fighters. When you have 2 great fighters match up, just because one wins the first time, honestly, typically it seems like the second time the other guy does win. And then you end up with the trilogy. So we'll see, though, what happens.
Absolutely. I mean, it's going to be a close fight, but the only thing that we can hope for as Strickland fans, I mean, I know you're kind of a Sean Strickland fan, as am I, obviously. The best thing we can hope for is Sean Strickland to listen to this podcast and realize, hey, these guys know the holes in Dricus' game.
Hey, hopefully.
Hey, tune in, Sean Strickland. You might learn a thing or two and go out there and take that belt back, take it back to America.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope so for sure. I think there's so many great contenders in the middleweight division. We talked about that over and over again. hopefully Brendan Allen will get a win and he'll get his title shot because they're saying that Sean Strickland for sure is the next title, the next contender for the title or the next matchup for DDP. But they're also saying if Brendan Allen wins another fight, you almost have to because that's a now 7 or 8 fight win streak. I mean, you're getting up there in a win streak. It's hard to not give a guy that shot. But then you have Hamza. So many great guys in that division. But I think if Brendan Allen gets a shot, dude, with that ground and pound to submission, and he just gets better each fight. And that's the main thing I look into when I'm watching a fighter. So, but like I said, we'll see what happens. I think that's very interesting. We'll keep you guys updated on the news on the middleweight division for sure because it's easily probably the best division right now.
Absolutely. I don't really have much else to cover for tonight, but I will say we're going to leave it. We're going to end it right here because next week's video is going to be a banger. The video we're going to do next week is the problem with the middleweight division, which is not a problem by any means. We're going to be going through and breaking down all the people in the middleweight division that should get the next title shot. And the problem with the middleweight division is there's so many guys that are deserving. And we're going to break it down right here on Outside the Octagon next week for you guys on who deserves it next, why they deserve it, and who's next after next. And we're going to rank it probably like the top 8 guys for next in line for a title shot, depending on outcomes. Obviously, it's going to be Whitaker and Hamzat in there. So Whitaker winning, Hamzat winning, obviously that throws them in the loop. Obviously, Brendan Allen, Nasruddin Imavov, that throws them in the loop. Either one of them winning. Obviously, Strickland's in the loop. Obviously, Izzy could technically still be in the loop, depending on how you look at it.
For sure.
I mean, there's a lot of guys that are in the loop. So we're gonna go ahead and wrap this video up. Jude, you got anything else to say?
Yeah, and what I was gonna say is we're almost at 10,000 views. We're approaching 10,000 views. The view counts shot up. The watch time shot up. Continue to do us a favor. Watch all the shorts. Watch all the videos. Leave us a like. Do whatever. And we have some great things planned for your community. And you guys leave comments. Suggest anything you want. And we will definitely take those into consideration. And we're hoping to reach 10K views. Hopefully, I'll say by the next episode, you think we can get there?
No, we're going to be there before this episode comes out.
Before this episode comes out. I don't know about
we're going to be there by Friday, I think.
We'll see. We'll keep you guys updated.
I mean, we got plenty more shorts to drop between now and then, dude. We're loaded up with short form content to keep out for the people.
Yeah, and that's been doing really good.
Keep that performing well, you guys. Watch it all the way through. Leave a like. I mean, we hit on some very good topics in the shorts. We use AI generated things sometimes to kind of predict what's going to be best for us next. And by doing that, we are able to break down and get the clips that you guys, according to AI, would like to see. So AI can sometimes be used for the good.
And I promise you, if you help us blow up, you help us start, really getting big, get to talking to every UFC fighter that ever existed, get us that platform, get us that voice. And I'll take a leg kick from Alex Pereira. I'm going to take a leg kick from every in-person fighter that's on the episodes that will be willing to kick me in the leg.
I love it.
So
I love
just keep liking it. If you want to see me get hurt. So if you hate me, if you're somebody out there that hates me, I'm cool with that. Leave me a like, leave me a subscribe on the a subscribe and like on the episode. Give us a view. And watch me get kicked in the leg by every UFC fighter. Watch me endure pain on the channel.
Absolutely. I mean, we're kind of turning into like what's the guy's name? Houston Jones. You know what I'm talking about? The guy that's like getting shot with 10,000 paintballs today.
Oh yeah.
Or the guy that does like the freaking like he grabs the rope swing and like ties like freaking like razor scooters on a rope swing. You ever seen him?
Yeah, I don't think
like the scooter fan.
I don't think I could go through that level of pain. But
that's excellent. I mean,
I do this.
I think these leg kicks might be kind of like close to. I mean, I think a leg kick may be worse than a freaking.
They really honestly hurt the next day more than they do on the spot. Like I feel like it's hard to walk after.
Yeah, but when you say you're going to be taking these from every UFC fighter that we interview, I mean, imagine we get this guy on, Johnny Bones.
I can tell you,
you're not going to eat that.
He's not. First off, he's going to be too scared to come on and kick me. He's not even going to do it. Even if he did do it, I'm going to take it like a champ. He's not going to do anything to me. My leg is solid steel at this point. I'm not even going to show pain. And if I do, I mean, who cares? I'll get views. But I'm actually interested to see how bad each one hurts. But, sometimes it hurts to walk in the mornings, but it's not that bad. So,
absolutely. And after about 20, 30 leg kicks that you eat, I think we do like a kind of like a ranking video for you.
Oh, yeah.
And let you kind of take the stage for a video, and then I'll kind of rank which ones I thought were the worst based off the way you reacted or whatever.
Hey, and that'd
be kind of interesting.
Once we move on from there, I might have to let every one of them choke me out or punch me in the face once I get every fighter to leg kick me. And at some point, I've just taken every shot from every UFC fighter,
Fact.
Got the full experience almost.
A roundhouse kick.
Yeah, I think we're a little far from there right now, thankfully.
Yeah, you got to work up the chin, dude. But shit, I mean, that's going to be a wrap for Outside the Octagon. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Back in person again. Going to stay this way for a while. Thank you guys much.
Peace out.